Imagine walking down the quiet hallway of a high school, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, lockers stretching endlessly to both sides, when suddenly you hear a cry for help. A voice so raw, so desperate, that it freezes your blood. You turn the corner, and what you see makes you question everything about humanity. Today's story is not just about a fight in school. It's about cruelty, pain, the hidden scars teenagers carry, and the one video that exposed it all. But before I share the chilling truth of what happened that day, I need you to do something for me. If you believe stories like this need to be told, if you believe voices that are silenced deserve to be heard, then please hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. Your support makes sure more stories like this come alive and reach people who need to hear them. Don't forget, like and subscribe right now before we dive in. Her name was Emily. She was 16, quiet, the kind of girl who blended into the background. She wasn't the cheerleader type, not the loud, attention-grabbing personality that some students carried like armor. She was the kind who kept her head down, books pressed tightly to her chest, moving fast through the halls as if walking too slowly might invite trouble. And maybe it did, because in every school, there's always someone looking for the weak link, someone desperate to feel powerful by tearing down another. For Emily, that someone was Jason. Jason was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of swagger that comes from knowing no one will stand up to you. He was the star of the basketball team, adored by teachers who only saw his athletic talent, and feared by students who knew what happened if you got on his bad side. He carried cruelty like a second skin, wore arrogance like a crown. And Emily, she became his favorite target. It started small, like it always does. A shove in the hallway. A cruel whisper about her clothes. Books knocked from her hands so many times she stopped bothering to pick them up quickly, waiting until the laughter faded before crouching to gather them. But cruelty is a hunger, it doesn't stop once it tastes blood. And for Jason, humiliating Emily became his daily sport. The day it all came crashing down started like any other. Emily walked into school wearing a sweater too big for her frame, sleeves covering her hands, hoping to stay invisible. She moved toward her locker, praying Jason would already be gone. But luck wasn't with her. He leaned casually against her locker, smirking as if he owned the place. "Morning, loser," he said, loud enough for the crowd of students nearby to hear. Snickers rose from the group. Emily kept her eyes down, murmuring a quiet, "Excuse me," as she tried to reach her lock. But Jason didn't move. Instead, he shoved her back gently, just enough to make her stumble, to let everyone see who held the power. Phones were already out. That was the world now. Pain wasn't just inflicted, it was recorded, shared, replayed for laughs. Emily's hands trembled. She tried to squeeze past, but Jason yanked her backpack and dumped it on the floor, spilling books, papers, and a small photograph of her and her mom. That photo was everything to her. Her mom was raising her alone, working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Jason picked it up, holding it high. "Ah, look at this. Mommy's little girl," he sneered. The laughter grew louder. Emily's chest ached, her throat burned with unshed tears. But she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. She reached for the photo, but Jason pulled it higher, mocking her tiny frame. And then, it escalated. Someone shouted, "Do it, Jason." And like a spark in dry grass, the cruelty ignited. Jason shoved Emily against the lockers so hard the clang echoed down the hall. Gasps rose, but not a single hand reached out to help. Students watched, recording, whispering. Emily's palms pressed against the cold metal, her body shaking, but she stayed silent. That silence enraged Jason. He wanted fear. He wanted a scream. So he pushed harder, pinning her with one arm while dangling the photo in the other. And in that moment, as Emily finally whispered, "Please, give it back," someone's phone caught everything. The video began spreading before the confrontation was even over. By lunchtime, the entire school had seen it. Emily trapped, Jason towering over her, cruelty dripping from every word. She didn't know yet, but her humiliation was being shared like wildfire, not just in her school, but beyond. Social media doesn't wait for permission, it devours pain. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because one student, sitting quietly in the back of the crowd, had been recording not for laughs, not for popularity, but for proof. Her name was Sarah. She'd been bullied before, years earlier, and no one had believed her. She knew the power of evidence. So when Jason shoved Emily, Sarah didn't just watch, she captured every second. That night, she uploaded the video anonymously, sending it to the school board, the principal, even the local news. And when it aired on television, when parents and teachers and the entire community saw Jason's act for what it was, something shifted. Emily didn't know how to feel. One moment she was invisible, the next she was a symbol of cruelty exposed. The news vans parked outside the school, reporters shouting questions, and suddenly she wasn't just the quiet girl in the hallway, she was the face of every teenager who had ever been cornered, mocked, or broken down. Jason's parents tried to defend him at first, calling it just kids being kids, but the world had seen too much. The outrage was unstoppable. Petitions circulated, demanding justice. Students who once laughed nervously at Jason's jokes now turned their backs. Coaches dropped him from the team. Universities withdrew their offers. For the first time, Jason wasn't the one holding power, he was the one drowning in shame. But the damage to Emily was deeper than a video could show. At night, she lay in bed, replaying the moment over and over, the sound of laughter haunting her like a ghost. She wondered if she'd ever walk down those halls without fear, if the whispers would ever fade. But then letters began arriving. Not from her classmates, but from strangers. Teenagers in other schools, states away, who saw themselves in her story. "I thought I was alone," one wrote. "But seeing you survive gives me hope." A boy in another town admitted he'd almost given up on life because of bullying, but Emily's courage reminded him to hold on. Slowly, the cracks inside her heart began to heal. She realized something powerful. Her pain had given others strength. The very thing Jason tried to use to break her became the light that guided others out of darkness. Emily decided to speak out. The first time was terrifying, standing in front of a small group at a community center, sharing what had happened. Her voice shook, her hands trembled, but when she finished, the applause wasn't just for her bravery. It was for every voice she carried with her. Soon, she was speaking at schools across the state, then the country. She stood on stages where once she would have hidden in the back row, telling teenagers, "You are not weak. You are not alone, and no one has the right to take your voice away." As for Jason, his fall was swift. Without basketball, without the adoration of his peers, he was forced to confront the emptiness he'd hidden behind cruelty. Some say he never fully recovered, that he carried the weight of that video like chains around his neck. Others say he tried to apologize years later, writing Emily a letter she never read. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't about letting the bully back in, it's about setting yourself free. Emily's story became more than a headline. It became a movement. Laws were proposed in her state to protect students from harassment. Schools began taking bullying reports seriously, no longer dismissing them as kids being kids. Teachers were trained to spot the warning signs. And students who once stood silently in hallways, began speaking up when they saw cruelty unfold. All because one girl refused to be broken. Now, if you're watching this, I want you to remember something: pain does not define you. What you survive, what you rise from, that becomes your power. And if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been pushed against the metaphorical lockers of life, know this: you matter. Your story matters. Your voice matters, and someone out there needs to hear it. So don't stay silent. Share this story. Be the Sarah who records the truth, be the Emily who finds strength in her scars, and never, ever be the Jason who builds power on someone else's suffering. And before you go, if this story touched you, if you believe voices like Emily's need to echo louder than ever, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you're not just supporting us, you're joining a community that refuses to let cruelty win. Together, we can make sure every voice, no matter how quiet, is finally heard.